My name is Claire. I'm 32 years old, and if I'm being honest with you, I've been carrying around a weight that feels heavier than my own skin. It's the kind of weight that creeps in slowly, so slowly you don't even realize it's there, until one day, you wake up and nothing feels like yours anymore. When I married Daniel 8 years ago, I thought I knew what love was. He was warm, steady, the kind of man who made me feel like no storm could shake us. He'd walk into a room and find my hand like it belonged to him. We used to kiss like we were afraid someone might steal the moment from us. That kind of kiss, hungry, soft at first, then deeper, like we had our whole lives to memorize each other. But lately, I don't even know how to explain it. We still kiss. We still touch. He still pulls me into bed at night and tucks his arm under my waist like he's afraid I might disappear. But there's something in it that feels practiced now, something stiff where it used to be loose and easy. The way he kisses me, it's like checking a box. Like he knows he should but doesn't really want to. And that scares me more than anything. Because there was a time, not so long ago, when I didn't have to ask for warmth. It was just there. I keep replaying this moment in my head, this tiny, ordinary moment that probably wouldn't mean anything to anyone else. It was a Sunday morning, early spring. I had been standing at the kitchen counter slicing strawberries, and Daniel came up behind me, like he always used to, and wrapped his arms around my waist. He rested his chin on my shoulder, kissed my cheek. It should have been sweet. And it was, but not the kind of sweet that makes you melt. It felt polite. Like when someone says, "Have a nice day," but they don't really mean it. I leaned back into him, tried to give him a little of that old energy, the kind that used to spark between us without trying. But his body felt distracted, his weight already half turned toward the hallway like he had somewhere else to be. It was then, I think, that I first felt it, the absence. The missing pieces you can't name out loud because if you do, then you have to admit something's breaking. I didn't say anything that morning. I just smiled, pretended everything was fine, and kept slicing the strawberries while he left to shower. But the truth is, my chest ached in this dull, private way, like I was losing something I didn't know how to keep. And maybe that's what makes this next part so complicated. Because around that same time, that's when he started showing up. The boy. I shouldn't call him that, he's 24, not a kid, but compared to me, he feels like one. Bright-eyed, restless, carrying this air about him like the whole world was still waiting for him to conquer it. His name's Evan. He started coming around because he's friends with my sister's boyfriend, and at first, it was nothing. Just a hello here and there, a casual wave across the parking lot. But then he started talking to me. Really talking. Asking questions no one had asked me in a long time. "Do you still paint?" he asked once, out of nowhere. I hadn't picked up a brush in years. Daniel used to ask things like that. Used to care about the pieces of me that didn't revolve around paying bills or keeping the house running. But somewhere along the line, life got busy. And Daniel stopped asking. Or maybe I stopped answering. I don't know anymore. All I know is that when Evan asked, I felt seen. And maybe that's when everything started to shift, even if I didn't want it to. Because there's this one moment, I can see it so clearly, when Daniel kissed me goodnight, quick and dry, like we were just roommates saying goodbye before bed. And later that week, Evan smiled at me in this way that made my stomach twist. That was the moment I realized something had changed. And maybe it had been changing for a long time. I keep telling myself it was harmless at first. That I wasn't looking for anything. But the truth? There was a pull. A quiet one at the start, easy to ignore, until it wasn't. It wasn't about Evan being young or charming or the way his hair always seemed a little out of place, like he'd just come in from the wind. It wasn't even the way his eyes held mine like I was saying something worth hearing. It was the fact that when he looked at me, he actually looked at me. Daniel used to do that. He used to trace the edges of my words like he wanted to memorize them. Now, half the time, when I speak, I get a distracted aham, like he's already in another room before I finish my sentence. One night, after dinner, Daniel was sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone. I curled up next to him, laid my head on his shoulder the way I always used to. He didn't move away, but he didn't move closer either. Just kept scrolling. I tilted my face toward him. "Can we talk?" I asked. "About what?" he murmured, thumb still flicking over the screen. "I don't know," I said. "Us." That made him pause. Just for a second. Then he put his phone down with a sigh, turned his head slightly toward me. "Claire, you worry too much. We're fine." Fine. That word hit like ice water. Because fine wasn't what I wanted. Fine wasn't what we used to be. Fine wasn't laughter at midnight or slow kisses in the kitchen when the pasta was boiling over. Fine wasn't the way he used to look at me like he was still choosing me every single day. But he didn't see it. Or maybe he didn't want to. And then there was Evan. He started showing up more often. Always with some excuse. Picking up my sister. Dropping off something she'd forgotten. Stopping by after his late shift because he was in the neighborhood. I should have told him to stop. I should have been firmer when I noticed the way his gaze lingered a little too long, when his compliments started landing somewhere between casual and something else. But the thing is, he never crossed a line. Not really. It was all words. Little conversations that felt too light to be dangerous, too innocent to be wrong. Except they didn't feel innocent. One evening, I was out on the porch watering the plants when he stopped by. He leaned against the railing, all easy charm, talking about nothing and everything, the weather, his job, the painting he remembered I used to do. "You should pick it up again," he said. "I bet you're good at it." I laughed softly. "I don't even have paints anymore." He smiled, a little sideways. "Then get some. Life's too short to not do the things that make you feel alive." Alive. I hadn't even realized how quiet things had gotten inside me until he said that word. And maybe that's when the guilt began creeping in, because he wasn't wrong. I did feel more alive when he was around. Later that night, when Daniel crawled into bed beside me, he kissed my temple the way he always did. It was soft. Familiar. But it didn't reach me. Not the way it used to. I lay there in the dark, my husband breathing steady beside me, and all I could think about was how wrong it felt to feel lonely while sharing a bed with someone you love. The tension kept building after that. Daniel started noticing things, Evan stopping by, the way I'd talk about him sometimes without meaning to. One evening, Daniel asked, half teasing, "That kid's got a crush on you, you know." I laughed it off. "Don't be ridiculous." But the way he said it, like it was a joke but also not, left a mark. Because he didn't believe me when I told him. The rain kept tapping against the windows that afternoon, soft and steady, like the world outside had slowed down just for us. Evan stood in the doorway dripping water on the mat, his hair plastered to his forehead, that crooked grin on his face. He didn't seem in a rush to come in, like he was waiting for me to decide. And the thing is, I hesitated. Not because I was afraid of him. But because somewhere deep down, I already knew letting him inside meant something was shifting, whether I admitted it or not. But I stepped aside. He slipped off his wet jacket and followed me into the kitchen, glancing around like he was memorizing everything, my mugs on the counter, the paint-chipped cabinets, the half-finished puzzle on the table. "Didn't mean to intrude," he said, shoving his hands into his pockets. "Just figured, rain like this, nobody should be alone." I told myself it was harmless. Just company. Someone to talk to. But that wasn't the whole truth. Because when he leaned against the counter while I made tea, I felt that spark again, the one I'd been pretending didn't exist. He didn't flirt outright. Didn't cross any lines. But there was something in the way he looked at me, really looked at me, that made my chest ache in a way I didn't have words for. We sat at the table, sipping tea while the rain kept falling, and he asked me about things no one else did anymore. My favorite book as a teenager. The music I listened to when I was sad. Whether I believed people could fall in love twice with the same person. Daniel never asked questions like that anymore. By the time Evan left, the rain had stopped, but the storm inside me hadn't. That evening, when Daniel came home, he kissed me on the cheek like always, the kind of kiss that used to feel like home. But now it felt like a habit. A reflex. "How was your day?" he asked, tossing his keys into the bowl by the door. "Fine," I said. Fine. That word again. Filling the space between us like fog. We ate dinner mostly in silence. He told me about work, I nodded in the right places. But underneath it all, there was this widening gap neither of us named out loud. Later, in bed, he reached for me. His hand on my hip, his lips against my neck. And I let him. But my body felt tense. Not because I didn't want him, but because I didn't know how to want him the way I used to. It wasn't about Evan, not really. It was about everything I didn't know how to say. About the years between us filled with routines and bills and tired evenings where the only thing we shared was the same roof. I kept thinking about the woman I used to be, the one who laughed too loudly, who painted until 2 a.m, who kissed her husband in grocery store aisles just because she felt like it. Somewhere along the way, she got buried under dishes and deadlines and a man who loved her but didn't see her anymore. And then there was Evan. He didn't try to touch me. Didn't try to be anything but someone who listened. But sometimes, listening is dangerous. Sometimes, it makes you feel things you've been starving for. One night, Daniel came home late, his tie loose around his neck. He found me on the couch, sketchbook in my lap, something I hadn't picked up in years. "Didn't know you still did that," he said, nodding toward the drawing. I shrugged. "Started again recently." "Because of him?" The question hit hard. "Because of me," I said quietly. But he didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes, the doubt, the way his jaw tightened. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I believed me, either. Because the truth was, the more Evan showed up, the more Daniel pulled away. And the more Daniel pulled away, the more I didn't know how to stop Evan from filling the empty spaces my marriage used to hold. I hadn't crossed a line. Not yet. But I could feel the crack widening, day by day. And I didn't know how much longer before the day everything came undone didn't look like a disaster at first. It was an ordinary Saturday. Daniel was home, mowing the lawn, the steady hum of the machine drifting through the open windows. I was in the kitchen, hair pulled back, folding laundry at the table. The sun was bright. Everything looked normal. But inside, nothing felt normal anymore. Because the night before, Evan had stopped by again. "Just for a few minutes," he said. He'd been walking his dog and thought he'd say hi. We stood on the porch talking about nothing important, movies, music, how summer was already slipping away. And then, out of nowhere, he said softly, "You seem sad sometimes." I laughed it off. "Do I?" He looked at me with those too young, too honest eyes. "Yeah. Like you're here, but not really here." I didn't answer. Because he wasn't wrong. That conversation hung over me the next morning like a storm cloud. Daniel came in from outside, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "You okay? You've been quiet all morning." "I'm fine," I said automatically. His brow furrowed. He sat across from me, arms resting on the table. "Claire, is there something going on?" I froze. There it was. The question we'd both been circling for weeks but never touched. "What do you mean?" I asked carefully. He leaned back, crossed his arms. "I mean, that kid. Evan. He's around a lot. And you light up when he's here. More than you do with me lately." The words landed sharp, even though he didn't say them angrily. I opened my mouth, closed it again. Because what could I say? That he was wrong? That Evan didn't matter? He did matter. Just not the way Daniel thought. Daniel, I said slowly, nothing's happening. He searched my face like he was looking for the truth under my skin. Maybe not. But something's changing. I can feel it. That cracked something open in me.